topics, or at least one good topic, and we got, and a little backup topic after that we're going to talk about. So, welcome again, and to my co-host, Julia Pierce.
Hey guys, how are ya?
We're back again. So, if you haven't seen us in a while, we're just trying to, right now, everybody's got kids in school, and today, I think, was the day that everybody went back to school. Is that not?
Yeah, that's correct. That's right.
So,
well, I know that's true for Marion County. I don't know if that's true for Muskogee.
Yeah, it is. They started today because my granddaughters did. So,
okay.
Yeah, they got on there. And last week we were spending money on shoes, obviously, but we did get some good deals on shoes, and we're always trying to save money like everybody else. So, one of the topics that I felt was very important that we wanted to talk about was elderly schemes, Ponzi schemes and elderly schemes and stuff like that are, scams against the elderly. And, I've worked in a law enforcement capacity for over 40 years now, probably going more like up 42 years that I've been working on it. And, as a law enforcement officer, we do the preliminary investigation. Mm-hmm. We come upon, and usually that's where most of the emotional stuff happens too, if anything happens on the preliminary investigation. So, follow-up investigators, they get the tail end of it.
Right.
And the problem with that, especially in a rural county setting, maybe not so much in this a big city setting, but the investigation is only as good as the information they get from the initial investigation.
So true.
And so if they don't get, it's important, and us as law enforcement officers, we can't get lazy when it comes to the details because you don't know what's important.
Right.
And believe me, I've worked a good portion of a lot of scams that are coming on, but AI technology is now rearing its ugly head.
Oh, yeah.
And it is very, very believable. I mean, really, right. To the point where, they're cloning people's voices.
Yes.
They're cloning their pictures.
Yes.
And, family members, or especially the elderly, are listening to these things, and it sounded little Johnny, it sounded like little Judy on the phone that called me. And that's the scary part is AI. I knew when AI was introduced that we were going to have a problem with it.
Yeah.
I did. But also we're going to talk about using AI in the technology field to work against these scammers because it can.
Ooh, yeah, that's interesting.
You go in with, to chat or one of those organizations and stuff, and you introduce some of this information to it, and it's scanning hundreds of thousands of records in a second.
Yeah.
And that's, so we're able to use that technology against them. But again, it's only as good as the information. And rural county sheriff's office probably don't have a lot of money for some of the technology that's out there.
Yeah, and because a lot of the elderly or a lot of the incumbents that have been in these positions have been there for several years, so they're used to what we would now deem as antiquated systems or ways of investigating.
Right. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and maybe a little surprise or two in there, and talk about the information that I think is important. So just getting back to the topic, there are 67 million baby boomers. Now I'm in that baby boomer generation. I'm at the very tail end of it, but there's 67 million of us out there, and that are we're potentially worth what statistics are telling us is $85 trillion. That's more than our national debt. I think we're 330 some or 334.
Oh,
I don't know what we're at,
there.
But it's up there anyway. And amongst the scammers, there's an old saying, among them, they were asked, why do you rob banks? Right? Because that's where the money is. So you think about it, elderly folks are where the bank's at, and the scams are, proposed to outdo take their money from them.
Social Security,
Social Security
EBT,
checks.
Medicaid, like a lot of that.
And some of the elderly folks are, they got money accounts, investment money accounts. They invested when they were
Yeah.
young and they were working and felt that money was going to carry them through their retirement age. In some cases, some people made some very good financial decisions, and others, because of the price and the increase of everything that's happening in our society, that the market has basically outpriced what their savings were they thought was going to take them into the golden age.
Yeah.
And they've outlived the time that they were, it's a harsh thing to say, but the technology is so good, medical stuff is so good these days that they're living older ages now that they weren't supposed to live that long,
Yeah. I think about how, as we're getting into the AI scamming of the elderly, I think about there's a guy that I've been watching for a while. His channel on YouTube is called Scammer Payback. And the guy that does it, he's blue haired. His name is Pierogi. And so he's been at this for several years.
He's weird already. He's blue hair.
Well, but I'm telling you, like so he uses their data centers against them. Like he's actually worked with international governments and stuff to shut down.
I've seen that. He traces them right to the apartment complex, like in Pakistan or one of those places
or
and stuff.
India, like in the different places, the data centers they have or the call centers in India. But he was also partnered with for a time. I forget his name now, but he worked for NASA for a period of time. And he started developing a way to get back at people who were like porch pirates and people who were stealing packages. And so he made the glitter bomb. And he was talking about how
I've seen some of those.
Yeah, he mirrored it after the idea from Home Alone where Kevin was.
Karens are up there trying to rob your porch bandits, and they're getting bombed on with paint balloons.
But now they don't even have to work that hard because of AI. And it is very believable. And one of the things that I wanted to mention is, there's this up in the air theory that Mitch McConnell actually may be dead or may still be in the hospital. And they've been showing how easy it is to just put him and his wife's faces on things. So, teaching us how to discern that is important.
Well, that's funny you said that, because the other day, it was actually about a month ago, one of our friends actually cloned a picture with my wife on it, her in a long dress and me in a suit. And there was a couple of them there. And I said, that's what kind of got me to this topic, was the fact that I was like, oh my God, that is extremely believable.
Yeah.
It didn't exactly look like me, but it actually looked like my dad a little bit, but you see how they're refining the technology up to this point where it's extremely believable. So, the elderly are so easy to scam. They are, because of what we just talked about, the technology and what's going on with it. So talking about the AI clones, the scams that are out there, that was one of them that really kind of threw me off. And then talking about cryptocurrency, that's another one where they're actually doing bank machines like ATMs at different places. You go into a liquor store, there's an ATM there you can purchase, and you got to watch that crap, because you don't know where that money's going. You have no idea. And cryptocurrency scam I worked a case one time, I want to say about 6 or 7 years ago, the initial investigation on the case. And this guy, he was a military guy, and he had made some investments. Of course, he was retired and he was a government contractor, and he invested in this cryptocurrency stuff early on. And they gave him a bank account number, gave him a password to get in, the whole 9 yards. He could look at his balances, and actually received, what do you want to call it? Money back from the investment, interest, right? Just like you do in a bank account or something like that, or stock market. And so he was never the wiser, because he was receiving money. But that's what happens in these Ponzi schemes, is because the money comes in and then they pay out these dividends, and you go like, well, it's legit, I'm getting money. but you don't understand. You're just in the hopper to get a few $1,000s or whatever you're getting out of it. And then he went back in, and it was over $150,000 that he was scammed.
Wow.
He went back in one day, looked at the balance, went back in on the second day for something else, and he couldn't get in. His passwords wouldn't let him in. And believe it or not, the site that he invested the money in was gone.
Goodness.
Gone, disappeared, nothing. And so this guy, I don't think you ever can recover from $150,000, a loss, but that's how believable this is. And I will tell you, I'll use myself an example when we talk about the scams, the credit cards. Back in when COVID had started, I was at home because of the COVID situation. I had like phase 2 of COVID. And so I was coughing my head off. I was sick. I had, didn't have much high fever, but, I had all of the cough and everything. And it was horrible. I actually bruised and broke some of my ribs. I coughed so hard. One day my wife was doing something. She wasn't at the house. And I got a call from this guy on the phone. And of course it sounded like a Pakistani Indian or whatever it was. I don't know who the hell it was, but one of those countries. And he told me he was from Georgia Power. That was the Georgia Power scam that was going around when it started up again.
Wow.
And I was just beside myself. I answered the phone and the guy goes, "Hey, look, I'll just cut to the chase." But he basically said, if we don't give a certain amount of money by this afternoon, by like 12 o'clock, we're going to come shut your power off. And I said, wait a minute. I said, I've been a good customer here. I've been always paying my bills on time and everything else. I said, that's impossible. And he goes, no. And he actually almost got me outside the door to go to a CVS pharmacy to get these little green cards.
Mm-hmm.
They're like credit debit cards.
Yeah.
And call him and then set the number to him so that he could draw the money out of the account.
Green,
and
the green dot?
Green dot. Yeah, the green dot cards. And I'm like, I'm just, now understand, I'm sick.
Yeah.
And so something told me to get on the phone and talk to my wife. So I did. I got on the phone, I called her. I said, Martha, what's going on with this? And she goes, hey, dummy, your money comes out of your bank account out of a draft. So you don't get, the only notification you get is, on the internet, on the email said your balance of whatever it was paid.
Right.
She said, don't go do that. And I was putting the key in the ignition of the car and actually, but this is, and you're probably looking at us and you're like, hey, dummy, I know that, but you don't understand. These scammers and Ponzi schemes catch you at the right moment at the wrong time.
Yeah.
And it can be believable if you're sick. I mean, I was coughing so bad. I felt my head was going to pop off, but this is how they get you. And elderly are kind of the same way. So some of the things that we're going to talk about, elderly female as a caregiver to her elderly parents was basically, scammed out of a significant amount of money. I mean, and the reason for that is there's a lot of different reasons. We had one in our county that I worked in was an actual elderly person that was taking care of her husband that was in early stages of dementia. And, she pretty much, I wouldn't say, all her faculties were there, but she was in better shape than her husband was, obviously. And this is what's happening with elderly caregivers because a lot of them don't have family members. And the worst part of that is sometimes the older folks can get kind of cantankerous, right? And crabby and don't want to deal with anything and don't want the family involved in it because they don't want to be a burden on the family. That happens a lot. And I've encountered that quite a bit. But in this case, this person was giving a significant amount of money to a courier that was going to drive up in the driveway and gave him one installation of money in a box. They even went as far as a personal courier coming up to that address.
Yeah.
And, I got called and took the initial report, and I said, don't do that. Don't do that. And this is the kind of thing that happens, though, because a lot of times it's elderly taking care of an elderly person. And, their mind is in one direction or than the other.
And these people, they actually target, they do investigations on whoever it is that they're going to be calling, and they target them. So they know if they've got health issues, they know if they're on Medicaid, like they know all of those things, and so they'll target those people. And like you were said, like they know when you're down, like they target you when you're down.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best way to weaken your responses. It's just like a disease does. Like the flu, what does the flu do? It gives you a fever, attacks your, some of the fevers attack your central nervous system.
Yeah.
You're throwing up, you're doing all those things. That's when you catch a vulnerable person.
Yeah.
But you're right. They do their research, and that's what's crazy about the whole thing. So some of the scammers are people that your parents trust, believe it or not. These may be neighborhood friends. These may be friends within the county. It may be people that you knew and people that you trust. Those are some of the people that will actually scam, off of parents. I had a lady one time, and I kind of laugh about it, but it's not funny. But they were I'm guessing they were probably in their middle to late 50s. And their mother was in middle to 70s, to late 80s or something around, or late 70s into 80. And she was actually donating money to who she thought was a country western singer. This guy, yeah, it's funny, but it happened.
I think that's why they came up with the blue checks that they make online.
Yeah. But I mean, he was getting her to donate money, and she was just, she was mesmerized by the fact that, she's a single elderly lady, and this guy's paying a little bit of attention to her. And, he's scamming her checkbook. That's what he was doing. And they called me and said, can we stop that? And I said, you can stop it. You got a power of attorney. Stop the account, stop the checks.
Yeah.
And this is the problem with some of this stuff is, it's so easy to make these things believable, in elderly parents, but elderly folks, they're very vulnerable because they're getting older or perhaps widowed or, working anymore at all. And so that's what happens because, they've worked, some of them are working into their older ages, and so those vulnerabilities come up and, they may be widowed because of the man or the woman in the family is no longer there. And so they're reaching and looking out for, I don't know if necessarily compassion, but, people to, they can talk to.
And I think that's why it's so important for, I think about my experience. Like my parents spent all of these years raising me and my sister. And,
right.
As my parents have gotten older, they rely on us as their children to help them as they're getting into the stages of what do they call it? The geriatric age or whatever. And so it's important when we're dealing with like elderly that they have children or grandchildren or even some sort of advocate that can teach them just the basics about using the internet or their phone or things like that so that they aren't caught unaware. And the children should be especially interested in that, especially if they have an inheritance or they're expecting to get something, given to them in trust or will.
Yeah. I know a guy, it's funny, but it's not funny because I'm probably getting there myself, but there's a guy I know that's still got a flip phone. And it takes him forever.
2G service.
Yeah, it takes him forever to type in. He's got 4 letters for what each line. It's like 4 things he's got to. I was like, come on, dude. I mean, I'll teach you how to get into the 21st century, and I don't know a lot about this damn phone. I don't, to be honest with you. There's not a lot.
Just enough to be dangerous.
That's it. Enough to get me dangerous. Enough to check my email, make sure my bank account, and things like that. Yeah. So if you're a caregiver a family caregiver for an elderly person, you know, in an older generation, it's easy for them to get scammed. One of the things you need to look at is the accounts. Large scams that are committed, they see bank statements, financial transactions, and they trust family members. So you may have a family member that's completely honest, that's in charge of one family member or not, for a mother and father, or both. But then you have other family members, and I see this all the time. Look, there's some greedy bastards out there, family members. And it makes me sick that you get out there and you're wanting to scam your own mom or dad or mother or sister or brother.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell are you thinking? You know, you're going to burn in hell. You should burn in hell because it's wrong, man. It's totally wrong. You know, they saved money all their life, and you're looking at an angle to try to get into their bank account.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, come on now. You know, don't be a scumbag. You know, I'm sorry.
Well, and the thing that you have to think about is, so some of these people, and we've heard this, like, you know, in the legal field and everything, you've heard about how they've forged their parents' signature, or while they were sick or maybe on medication, they have caused them to sign something and didn't know what it was, or were told that, hey, this is just this, you're just signing that. And what they've ended up doing is signing away power of attorney to their next of kin, or transferring trust to someone else, or, you know, invalidating a will. And so I think that's why it's important for people to understand that they can use the courts, because part of being in a contract is you have to be of sound mind. And so that can be challenged. That doesn't obviously relieve if they've already lost money or property, but there are civil remedies that can be obtained. And again, of course, like if they're elderly, but I think that's why they need to look into having advocates and make sure that they trust who are with them when they're in the hospital or hospice or whatever the case.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like I said, and you may have nobody else in the family but one daughter or one son or something that they trust, you know, and that's it. That's all they got. And they're over there scamming money out of their bank accounts. You know, I'm not saying they all do that, you know, but there are cases when this happens. And there are some broad cases out there where it happens. But, excuse me, your parents, they might trust members because they may not be any family left in there, which opens them up to be scammed. I mean, that's the bottom line. Older people are losing their capacity to make good decisions because I don't remember when I was a kid seeing as much dementia as I see now.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some people are going to go on the internet, look it up, and they're going to go, well, that's wrong because 20, 30 years ago we had, you know, I said, but I'm talking about from my experience as a kid. I don't, just like cancer. Cancer was an unsolvable thing back when I was a kid. My dad died from cancer at an early age. 15, 16.
My grandfather died with Sundowners, and
now,
he was a veteran.
Yeah, now there's some patients that are on multiple cancers and they're being cured, you know, and it's popping. And now the longevity is not really good. Some people last more than 5 or 10 years, and some last a couple of years, but the technology is getting better.
Yeah.
You know, and now they're treating cancer treatment with genealogy, with when you want to talk about it, injections of certain things and drugs and all that.
Genetic modification.
Yeah, genetic modification. And that's seeming to have
gene therapy.
Yeah. And that's seeming to have a good results. But in the same thing we're talking about is the cases of dementia are more prevalent now. And I don't know if there's some argument that it could be stuff that we're eating and could be stuff that we're drinking in our diet. I don't know. I really don't. But I'm not a scientist, but I can tell you from a law enforcement standpoint, as a professional, what I see on the other end of that. So when elderly workers, when they were young, they worked hard, saved money, only to find out the financial savings, like I mentioned earlier, is not lasting the way they had. And some of them have to go back to work. And so not only will they either go back to work, but what does make them vulnerable is they will be looking to these scams because these scammers will come up and say, look, I got a good deal for you. You're getting in on the ground street of this investment. And 90% of them are Ponzi schemes.
Yeah.
And so, this is due to the ever cost of high living every day has outpriced their investment. And so now a lot of them are going back to work, and a lot of them are looking for investment stocks and things like that, or Bitcoin or whatever, and
Crypto.
they're willing to invest. Yeah. In crypto. And they're really not looking into it. You need to if you do investments like that, you need to, before you even dedicate any money or any cash to anything like that,
check them out.
Have a
Yep.
family member. If you do have some, if it doesn't, call the police, call law enforcement authorities, ask them to come out here. And if this is a gee whiz bang, scam, then we're going to find out if it is or not.
Yeah, well, I want to address that because you were talking about how in the rural counties, especially, that the high rate of the scam, or like that there's a high rate of scamming that happens on there. And so my question to you would be, do you feel like as you're encouraging people to call law enforcement, do you feel like law enforcement has been trained or has the appropriate credential, skills, experience to be able to investigate that?
No.
No.
Not, because you've got report takers and then you got investigators.
Yeah.
But what, report takers need to do with this, those are the guys and gals are their, what I call first encounters.
Mm-hmm. It's
important that you get all that initial information out of there, because even here, when I was in detective training here, we moved around to all the different squads, within the thing. You were in homicide, you were in property crimes, you were in persons crimes, you were in all those things. And I will tell you this, and it may be different now. I don't know. I'm just speaking from the day that I went through training. But the bottom line is we would get stacks of reports in that day in the division, in the detective division. And a lot of those cases didn't have any more information. We would call the victim and say, do you have anything additional that we can put in the report? And we put in there, and it was like, no, I don't have this, but I did have that. And if they didn't have none, we put in there, called victim on so-and-so date, so-and-so time. No additional information is received at this time. Case is still under investigation. Boom, fold it up, stick it in the file. Because there's so much of it, we just don't have the time to investigate, especially like big city action. County, probably rural county areas, you probably have a little bit more time to invest. But I'm going to tell you, quite frankly, they're just not interested in it until you get some solid information. And I'm not saying this happens on every county or every small city, wherever it is, but the majority will just table it until they can get some more information on it. And we just don't have the time or latitude. And that's why I'm thinking probably everybody needs a little bit. There's no doubt that everybody needs training. No doubt.
Yeah.
Training is the mainstay of everything in law enforcement. The same thing with like in the military. You don't train, you have an effective force. You don't train in law enforcement, you don't have an effective force.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, like, as the age of AI is coming in like a flood, so to speak, that in these law enforcement agencies, it would be really important to hire or even create a division that's specific to like, I know they have cyber crimes, but even there, the cyber crimes unit isn't even up to date on how to handle identity theft, like,
right,
which is done mostly on the cyber platform,
Right.
So it was like, it would be really helpful for these law enforcement agencies to open up divisions that are specific to AI crimes.
We're going to talk about that.
Are we really?
We sure are. I told
Okay.
you. Listen, folks, there's one thing you understand when I present solutions, okay, when I talk about a problem, and that was what, when I ran for mayor, it was the same thing. I had solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had Isaiah Hughley going, well, you don't have to train me from day one. I know exactly what I'm going to do when I get there. But what does he do? He enlists the help of two other people in a transition team.
wait a minute, didn't you tell me that from day one you're ready to hit the ground running? I was ready to hit the ground running because I came up with ideas.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm not a smart guy, but the Army taught me a very valuable skill. That's called research.
Mm-hmm.
And I did research. And you know what? In a research, I can do in 5 minutes, I can come up with a battle plan that's, and then come up with several other battle plans in case that one fails. Well, guess what? I got a battle plan here.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about those things.
Well, I wanted to finish this and maybe you cover this as well. Cause what I was thinking about is a lot of times when you hire people into law enforcement, that you'll hire them just brand new. They haven't had any experience. Maybe they're fresh out of the academy, whatever. And I think that it would be really interesting to open up that kind of a division to people like paralegals or private investigators, people that have experience researching all over the internet, and even potentially people who maybe worked for the Geek Squad like I did, or, have done network. They know how to trace network traffic, things like that. So those kinds of avenues would be open up for new employment processes.
Right. I agree 100%. So, we've got to come up, and we'll talk about this, about the technology and what could be used and what can be used. I will tell you this. The state of Georgia is on top of its game when we talk about child pornography and things.
Yeah.
Sharing it on the internet, tapes and all those things. They got a national clearing center. Guess what? That's what I'm proposing, is a national clearance center.
Pass a bill or pass a law too that has something to do with cracking down on human trafficking?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, we're going to talk about a task force that we could create for the elderly on these Ponzi schemes. Because remember what I just told you, how many $1 trillion. And in my research, which I wanted to do, and maybe somebody can come on here, but I'm just curious on how much fraud, the worth of how much fraud is in Georgia just alone.
Yeah.
I meant to go look at that and then kind of ran out of time in that research. But nationwide, that's a lot. We're talking.
We could do a FOIA request to the IC3Gov website and ask how many reports of cybercrime come in.
Yeah, we could do that. The scams basically they're coming in from all over the world. The Pakistan, India, Africa, Somalia, they're coming in all over the world. And so they're just not analogous to the United States, but all over the world we're coming in.
Yeah, and that should be really concerning
Sure.
because they're taking American dollars over to whatever nation it is. And of course, the American dollar is worth more in some nations than their own currency.
No, that's a fact. I mean, when I was in Afghanistan, they liked American dollars in larger denominations because on the payback, on the return, they would get more money on the return.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things that, that happen. But anyway, so the scams are coming in all over the world. Statistically, there's two out of every 7 scams are actually being reported. So what we're talking about, we said $196 billion. How many are not being reported?
Yeah.
That total is not totally accurate. It's probably, I'm guessing it's probably in excess of $250 billion. But that's a lot of these are not, $196 billion is not being reported. That's a lot of money.
And I think that probably has something to do with they just don't know where to go to report it.
Right. And there is some things we'll talk about that.
Okay.
We're getting there. Trust me, folks. We're getting there. I'm getting there. But we just don't know what that total is. So basically I told you 2 out of 7 scams are not actually reported. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. These estimates are what we currently know. Think about if you're scammed out of, let's just take this scenario. You're scammed out of $600. For some folks, that's not a lot of money. Right. Some folks, that is a lot of money. But you're scammed out. Are you actually going to call the FBI over $600? Probably not. Some folks will, but some folks not. They won't. They just won't call.
They'll just chalk it up to lesson learned.
A lesson. Some will, and some will keep committing the same thing. We'll do it over again. So think about it. If you're scammed out of $600, I don't think you're actually going to call the FBI. Now, the Federal Trade Commission reports that 1 out of 70 older citizens report scams.
Wow, that's really low.
That's really low. And then this is by the FTC, so they're reporting those numbers. Do you actually know if you've been scammed? You might not know unless you're checking your bank accounts. I have facial recognition on all my accounts. So when I go in, I even got one account's got a retinal scan on it. Can't lie about that. That's hard to clone.
Have you tested to see if an AI replication of you
I
would
haven't.
open it?
I haven't.
You
but
should do that.
I should do it. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, retinal scans is what we use in Afghanistan to identify bomb makers. We took information on their fingerprint scans, retinal scans, because some of them would actually blow themselves up. We'd have a head left or a finger left or something. And we could tell, yeah, that was that guy, it was this gal or whatever it was. So retinal scans are still 100% foolproof as far as I know. But
about
technology is
fingerprint
getting bigger.
scans? Couldn't, like, since all these data centers have access to, like government databases and things like that, could they?
Yeah, I guess it's possible that you could probably clone fingerprints. I'm not doubting you can't, because that's a physical thing. But the eye retina scan is just like a fingerprint.
Yeah.
You can't lie. You can't lie over it. You really can't. It's just not. It's the most accurate thing we got right now. But so you wouldn't actually report these things you were scanned at them. Caregivers of family members of elderly parents. Before your parents start developing memory issues, you need to have that conversation 5 years prior to things happening. You'll probably know when your parents are getting into that age, there's forgetfulness coming in. There's things that they're still cognizant of their surroundings. They still know who you are. But the recommendation is 5 years prior to the onset of these diseases, so that you can make smart decisions and plans about powers of attorney, who's going to trust, where you're going to put your trust at, your money and your property and those things. So, and I will tell you that is going to be, family members have to take that on their own, whoever is going to be the caregiver. And those are difficult. I'm going to tell you, those are difficult conversations. Very difficult, because number one, the elderly folks feel that they're losing control. And they don't like it because they've been in control of their whole life.
Yeah.
Right. And their kids and everything else. Now their kids are telling them what to do. But in most cases, if you've got good, honest family members that are doing that, then it's hard to relinquish that control, but they're at least they're looking out for them, because it's going to happen to them too.
Well, I remember when I was in college and I took my class for wills, trust, and estates. And one of the things that they were teaching us about how to write a will or a trust or even an estate document is to make sure that you are setting it up to where only in the event, like in your advance directive, so to speak, only in the event that you've been legally declared not to be sound of mind would these conditions kick in, where your power of attorney. Or let's say, for instance, like I wrote one where it was just it was a lesson assignment, and I ended up giving Sarah access to my business assets, for if I was hospitalized for a certain period of time or what have you. And so there's ways that you can write those or have attorneys write those where your parents or your elderly, like grandparents or whatever, still have control. And then of course you have like conditional directives, or I forget what, like revocable, like you have revocable trusts and things like that. So there's still options where you can write those things or have them written to where they still maintain control.
What about auto pens? How about auto pens?
Well,
Joe Biden wasn't a sound mind body, but he still had an auto pen.
Yeah, well,
he's signing Fauci's what is that? His letter.
Yeah, well, from what I've researched and what I learned in college, especially in the legal field, you technically have to have a wet signature. Like these stamps actually are not legal, and from what I understand, maybe that's changed in the last year and some odd change since I've been out of school. But when we researched it, you have to have a wet signature. So all these like stamps from these judges and things like that, like I think a really good attorney could question whether or not those documents are legitimate.
Yeah. Who's going to question the judge, right? It should probably be, but nobody's going to question it. But there you go. Judges don't always make good
Case
decisions.
law.
They don't always, case law.
Case law appeals.
They don't
and-
always follow case law either. But yeah, 5 years prior to that, you got to start having those conversations, and it's going to be difficult. I remember when my mother, we had to take her driver, just an example, take her driver's license away. And the reason we had to do that is because she was blacking out. She'd get in her car and black out, and she almost had an accident with another car, and was family in there. I mean, and just doing that, taking her driver, you're taking that level of independence away.
Mhm.
And I'm going to tell you now, there's levels of independence, and that was one of them. The other levels of independence are, basically like you've got your kids, your grandchildren, and normally you were used to, when they were small, you were used to making them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Well, now, now the grandchildren would go, well, Grandma, I don't need that. I can make my own.
Yeah.
And see, what that does is it has an effect on them because now they feel they're not needed.
Yeah.
Right? They
Yeah.
feel they don't need that. Peanut butter jelly sandwich, or hey, I'll make you
Like
this.
they've
and
lost their purpose.
oh yeah, and don't worry about that.
Yeah.
And it has a degrading effect in their mental memory. And I know a guy that I work with that, he told me that story about his mom, and it makes kind of sense, because you got to have a task and purpose in life.
Yeah.
And when you start losing task and purposes, you just don't feel like you want to live anymore. That's just the way things are. If you have bank access to these accounts, frequently check the parents' statements to see if there are large amounts of money missing.
Or even lots of small transactional
Small
amounts.
transactions amount
Yeah.
that can add up over a period of time. You're right. So that's one of the things that we think is most important. Usually this has been happening for a long time. So if it happens and you notice it, go back in prior statements,
Mhm.
monthly statements, and look. It's probably been going on for a lot longer than what you realize.
Yeah.
Cleaning up these financial messes by your parents usually take a long time. Ask questions on how it happened. So talk to them and find out how long. They may not be willing to share that information with you because it may be embarrassing to them.
Embarrassing. Yeah.
And they feel that you're prying into their personal life, even though you've been in their personal life all their life.
Yeah.
The bottom line is that's how they feel. And so, but you got to do it, and you got to ask the questions, because some financial institutions are really good about reinstituting the money back to the bank account. Some, not quite so.
Yeah.
Some will just like, well, that's your problem kind of thing. And unless you have some kind of banking insurance or overdraft or something like that, you may end up losing that money, most of the time, they're going to tell you that they just didn't want to bother you or the kids, that we had a problem. And because of their embarrassment part of that,
Mhm.
And they're getting old, and I just don't want to be a burden on you and that kind of thing. You guys are living your life. You got your children, my grandchildren, and they just don't want to be a burden to it. So a lot of those issues are because of that reason.
Mhm.
Like I said, these conversations are often very difficult because, again, they may resist and avoid telling you anything.
Yeah.
In that case, you may have to, if you've got power of attorney, you might be able to get in there and look at it yourself. Especially if it's not going to give you those personal answers that you're looking for. In my opinion, if you're going to be a state representative or legislator, I think that the state and federal governments, they need to have just one number to call to report fraud. That is where I think it's lacking right now. And that would be good Georgia state legislation to go forward and develop a task force, but have one number that is the clearinghouse. It could go straight to the Department of Justice, the FBI, and then it could get filtered down to the states from that point on. The more hands that are involved, the more likelihood is that you'll catch who the scammers are, whether they're international or anything. So,
Well, I think about how, because I have been the victim of identity theft since 2015.
mhm.
And My identity theft started when I lived in Opelika, Alabama. And so, what I have found from Opelika, Alabama to Columbus, Georgia to Buena Vista, Mock Box Springs, Georgia, is that they tell you if you have been the victim of an identity theft or a cybercrime to contact your local authorities.
Yeah.
But then you call your local authorities and they tell you to
Contact the bank.
No, they tell you to contact either the FTC
Oh, yeah.
or to contact IC3.gov.
Handing it off to somebody else.
And the crazy thing is they don't have any way for you to attach any kind of documentation, anything like that. And
Right.
so I don't think the problem, and this is just my opinion, being someone who has experienced it, I don't think the problem is legislation for an automated system or like a one-stop shop in Georgia that would take you to the right place. I think it's really about making sure that our law enforcement are educated how to handle these kinds of things. And of course, this is not like a one-stop catch-all, you're going to be perfect the first time. But I think it also involves getting fresh, young people who are aware of the advancements in the technology industry to be part of that law enforcement division and stop giving it to just the elderly folk or the people who have been in there for 19 terms,
Yeah.
so to
exactly.
speak.
Well, I'm going to tell you, for law enforcement, this is a larger problem trying to solve. Okay. And the problem is because of information, because it's distant, it may be another country, maybe somewhere else. That's why I'm talking about federal and international partners, bringing them together, because we could work together in there, and make that a demand by the United States. I mean, we demand everything else. Why not demand it? But, it just seems like we're not paying a lot of attention to it. And when you do get prosecutions, it's very, what do you want to call it? Very difficult to catch these people and to get successful prosecutions.
Well,
and then the penalties are not stiff enough either.
yeah.
So you've got to make it, if you catch them, you've got to make enhancements on those things, on those, catching on those laws, the fraud, and make sure they don't do it again.
Well, I think that also comes with making sure that you have attorneys and judges that are willing to actually do work and not just be lazy or rely on plea deals, because a lot of that stuff can be returned through subpoenas through the discovery process. But some people just don't want to take the time or the effort. They'd rather just take the surface level and just be done with it. Like, this is a complicated case. It won't benefit me getting like quick cash in my pocket. So I think that there are a lot of changes that need to come even in the Bar Association.
Yeah, I agree. So I've told you everything that I think is a problem and the reason how we can develop solutions for it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make an announcement right now so that you understand. I've mentioned this earlier, and I think that I'm going to run for district representative for District 139 out of Georgia.
What?
For 2028. Yeah, I'm going to do it. So I'm sure that's going to get around all over the internet pretty quickly. Look, I'm not saying that Carmen Rice hasn't done a good job in there. She's done it. But I think there's more that can be done. And the proper legislator in the position could get more done. Because these are important topics. I have at least 10 other topics that I think are very important as running for a state legislature position. But this is one that's on the top of my list. Beside taxes and, stiffer penalties for crimes committed, these are some of the things that we're going to. So I'm leaning toward running, and I think it's going to happen. So we're about to talk about. They were like, okay, you're going to do that. So what are some of your solutions? Well, just guess what? I do have a solution. So I've got kind of a prepared statement that I'm going to read off here. And it says, as a Georgia state representative of District 139, I have several practical avenues to introduce legislation aimed at the reduction of fraud against elderly or older adults. While many fraud schemes across state lines and involve federal agencies. As Georgians, we can strengthen the prevention, reporting, enforcement, and victim protections. So that's what I'm concentrating on those things. So here's some of the ideas. We got some ideas. So some of the ideas that could be developed into legislation. We're going to talk about increased crime penalties, like I mentioned earlier, for elderly financial exploitation, right? That's one of the things we can do. So how do we do that? We create enhanced penalties, like I just spoke about, when victims are age 65 or older, all right? Probably, in some cases, that could probably be around 60 in some cases.
Like after the age of retirement.
Yeah, because there's some folks out there that, that age faster at earlier ages. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Or have taken their retirement early because
Right.
they've
62 or, when they finally do that.
Yeah.
But create enhanced penalties for those victims that are 65 or maybe 62 or older. Increase restitution requirements so as offenders must repay victims. I think that's important because it acts as a deterrent toward, additional crime being committed. And so we want to make sure that they're getting repaid and the victims are, and that's happening. Allow courts to freeze assets earlier during the investigation. So if they see they're able to look at those things, they can freeze those assets. Require financial institutions, and this is where it's important to get the financial institutions working with law enforcement.
That's awesome.
Financial institutions are to report suspected elder fraud. And how would they do that? This legislation could require them to expand protections for banks, credit unions, investment firms. Employees who reasonably suspect financial exploitation could also delay suspicious transactions for a limited period of time. Notify law enforcement or Georgia Adult Protective Services. I have done a lot of notifications for APS on different things, and got them involved in it. As much as I always can, I always recommend it, and I file cases. So I think it's important for that. Receive immunity when reporting in good faith. So if you're one of these people that knows that a scheme is going on, and it's a broad scheme within the area, and it's there, if you're willing to be a whistleblower and come forward, offer those protections against prosecution, especially if you know it. That helps develop witnesses and come forward, right?
That's awesome.
Many states have adopted similar safe harbor safe laws. And so these are just some of the things that we would look at. The third thing that I'm looking at is establish an elder fraud task force.
I was wondering if you were
It's coming.
that.
It's coming.
Yeah.
Trust me. The general.
And is there training involved in that?
Oh,
too?
yeah.
Requirements?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So the General Assembly could create a statewide task force, including the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, right?
Mhm.
The Attorney General's office. I think it's important. Local prosecutors, banks, bank regulators, Adult Protective Service, APS that we just talked about, and financial institutions. Those are key elements to make sure that this is successful, this task force. The task force could coordinate investigations, fraud trends. So they're tracking this across nationwide and worldwide on the new trends. And this is part of that training that we talked about. Why is it important for law enforcement to know that? I don't get any annual training on tracking fraud trends across the nation, but I think it's important that has to, in order to be successful. And then we recommend annual legislative improvements. We do get updates on laws for our 20 hours of training every year.
Mhm.
Why not get some of that stuff, legislative recommendations on training for annual training for law enforcement? We don't get it,
Well, and
especially for that side of it.
What about actually putting in there like the possibility of receiving grants for those people
Mhm.
who have like a digital forensics
Yeah. We're going to
like
need that.
team.
Yeah, we're going to
Because,
need that financing
well,
anyway.
when it comes to AI, it's important to have a digital forensic specialist because
Yeah.
they're able to go in there and tell, like, hey, this is, AI programming. This is not a person's voice, or this photo has been edited. Like, they can tell that already
Well,
before AI was even introduced.
those are the investigators that work with the child pornography they're trained at those levels.
Exactly.
I mean, they get notifications from a national, task force to investigate local areas and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Why can't we do that with this?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. We can do it. It'll be a separate task force because money is dedicated from one pot to the next, but this would be a separate task force. So to strengthen power of attorney protections for the families, legislation could require clearer disclosures to agents that are involved in any of that. Increase oversight, criminalize misuse more explicitly, and allow faster court intervention. That's always been an argument. Court intervention, they're sitting there for long periods of time, need to clear the county jails out and get them bed space in the state system and clearing that out, or probations or whatever. See, I'm very reluctant on the probation side of that. And the reason that I'm saying that is because we're asking them to pay a penalty against fraud against elderly folks.
Yeah.
So I know this is going to touch you off.
Okay, yeah. So I'm also someone who has had experience with receiving restitution because
Right.
my vehicle was stolen and they caught the guy.
I remember that.
Yeah. And so, like, when you go through the courts like that, if you're ordered restitution, then if you're on probation, they still require you to pay your probation, and a good percentage of your probationary fines goes towards restitution. So that would be a really good way to regulate that.
Yeah.
But my other thing that I was going to say is they could create another court, because just like they have recorder's court or they have family court, they
Right.
could create a fraud court.
They get an economic court or something.
And that would make more jobs for
Yeah.
other people as
Yeah.
judges.
No, I agree. I mean, these are all great ideas. Require scam warning notices. And this is really important. It says require businesses that commonly handle high risk transactions to display scam warnings, and including this would include wire transfer locations, cryptocurrency ATMs. Remember, I told you we've got ATMs that are sitting in liquor stores, cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
There should be a mandatory warning on these labels, like a pack of cigarettes. If you smoke, you're going to get cancer.
Yeah.
The same thing. We should do that. And that just helps on our recognition. Gift card retailers. Those are some of the things that are huge scams.
Yeah.
I told you about what happened to me on the green card. That these things, maybe if I would have seen that, would have jogged my memory. It's like, wait a minute. What am I doing, dummy?
Well, that kind of makes me think about how, like, when I worked for CBS, right back when, meth started becoming a really big thing.
Yeah.
I think that was in 2006, I think.
Yeah.
And we would card people whenever they would buy Sudafed or something that had pseudoephedrine,
Right.
Or was it
Ep-
ephedrine or
Yeah.
what? I can't remember. It's been a while, but like,
Epinephrine.
what if they were buying gift cards, and in order to buy a gift card, you have to, how they have like the electronic places where you have to sign
Yeah.
picking up your medication.
Right.
It could be something like that retailers,
Yeah.
are required to provide that information to
Yeah.
people before they purchase the gift card.
And I know a lot of folks are going to go, well, there's just more stuff we got to. It's like, we're talking about
It's
protecting.
protection.
Yeah, we're talking about protecting your parents, okay? The
Yeah.
elderly here.
Well, and protecting your
You know,
inheritance.
Yeah, maybe your inheritance. I mean, so, there's always going to be the naysayers out there like, oh, here we go, more laws we got to put it. Yeah, but the problem is the laws that we have in place are not working.
No.
And we don't have the task force that's necessary to investigate these crimes. It's not there.
Or the training to enforce them.
Training to enforce
Yeah.
it. So create a senior financial protection registry. This allows seniors to voluntarily designate a trusted contact whom financial institutions can notify when suspicious
That's
activity is
good.
detected. So you've got a trusted family member. And I think when we sign these power of attorneys, I think it's necessary that we get legal help involved in it as a protectionary measure, just to make sure that the people that we're designating as, trust, that are trusting these bank accounts and everything else, that we make sure that they're doing the right thing. They're not just signing these power of attorneys under duress or, things like that,
Well,
because
those
it
can
could
be
happen.
invalidated if you can prove it.
Right. Exactly. And so I think that's one of the important that we establish, somebody that the bank is on the hotline for,
Yeah.
they can call, because I've seen and again, I'm going to tell you, bank tellers need this training too. And the reason they need it is some banks are really on top of it. They're on top of it, especially if they know this person they've known who comes in all the time, the bank, and all of a sudden, they start asking for $25,000 or $50,000, in large denominations, bills or whatever. They're like, the bank tellers need to ask this question.
What's your credit limit?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want your spending limit
Right.
to be
Have a
at?
spending limit on those
Yep.
bank accounts, and or just notification. Notify the bank president that you're coming in. The teller should say, wait a minute, Judy just came in yesterday and got $5,000 out of her account.
Yeah.
And of course we have to protect, because I know this is another question, is people are going, well, you can't tell me what to do with my money. No, I understand that. I get it. But then there's folks over there when they are fraudulent and something happens to them, they're asking us to do miracle things to try to get the money back. You see what I'm saying? You can't rob Peter to pay Paul, or you can't have your cake and eat it too. You got to have one or the other. I mean, that's just life. That's just the way life is. But improve the reporting system. So what we're going to do is create a single statewide elder fraud hotline. That's what I think is important. And that could work through APS, however it wants to be established.
That's actually kind of cool.
An online reporting portal so that you can go online, caregivers could go online and report it. A centralized database to identify repeat scammers. So that's important, because if we start law enforcement, we go into that database, we can see that XYZ is popping up, here and there.
Yeah.
And it's in different areas of the nation. Sometimes we might be able to, just by where it's popping up at, be able to decentralize or centralize the areas that they're in. And it'll help our investigations all the way along the line. Fund specialized prosecutors in the system.
Yep.
Because it's overworked and underpaid.
Yeah.
You know how that is. And you got people sitting in jail for months on end. So provide grants for district attorneys to establish prosecutors dedicated just to elder abuse. Now, so it's not only financial scams, it's other elder abuse that's happening.
Do we have a current statute or law, or even a bill that's in progress that actually mandates that scammers in Georgia, if they violate this Scam Act or whatever they call it, that they can be held accountable? Because I don't recall that we do.
I don't think we do.
So maybe
And
we need to
again,
work on that kind of legislation
Yeah,
as well.
I will do some more research on that part of it. Like I said, I didn't get all the information that I wanted to get, and other.
But
But
you got a good bit.
yeah, well, there's more.
Okay, well, we're actually at an hour and two.
Well, we're going to go a little bit longer.
Okay.
So, increased consumer education. PSA announcements, I think, is important, and we're constantly paying for stuff, like that, and we're putting it out there.
Well, we did that. Sarah and I did that. That PSA video whenever you were running for sheriff the last
Right.
term. So we could re-air that as well.
Right. Could do that. County workshops, I think, are important. Partnerships with libraries, churches, and senior centers. I think, and I don't see any of that going on.
No.
There may be, you can correct me on it, but as far as I'm concerned, I didn't see any materials,
No.
current, explaining current scams. I don't think enough people know with the AI thing, how detrimental that is, and just how widespread it is, and quickly.
Think about if we had like a commercial that came on kind of like back in the 80s when you had the infomercial came on that's like, do you know where your kids are?
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah,
10
yeah,
p.m.
yeah, exactly.
Like, what if we could start getting is it the FCC?
Yeah.
Like, what if we could start working with the FCC to do, because, a lot of the elderly do watch TV still. They do,
Yeah.
And so like, what if we could work with the FCC to put out like hourly or maybe even like 3 times a day, put that
Yeah.
in the legislation as well.
Even if you just did it once a day, I mean, eventually that's going to catch on, that.
Yeah,
but
put it on there during the time the soap operas
Yeah.
are on.
yeah, why not? So this is an example of the bill infrastructure that I'm going to develop. This
Okay.
is part of that.
That's good.
And so as a state representative, I will introduce what we call an Elder Financial Protection Act of 2028 or 2029 as whatever the election comes around, whatever it's going to be. So legislative findings, definition, enhanced criminal penalties are all part of that Protection Act that I'm going to reduce for legislation.
We got to come up with a catchy, like, short name for
What
that,
it
for
is,
the act.
Elder Financial Probation Protection Act.
So what would EF? You say it again. Elder what?
Georgia Elder Financial Protection Act of 2028. That's what we're looking at. So
Okay.
that's going to have mandatory reporting in the act for financial institutions, because right now there's none. Temporary holds on suspicious transactions. It'll allow them in legislation to, like I mentioned before, the teller notices that $25,000 or $50,000 was taken yesterday and another $5,000 today. It allows them, under law, it would allow them to question those things, right? Gives them the legs to do that. Civil immunity for good faith reporters, like I mentioned before, right? We got whistleblowers out there that know what's going on. The creation of the Georgia Elder Fraud Task Force is what's going to be part of that. This other part of this. The Victim Restitution Fund, we talked about that. Public Education Initiatives, PSA, this is all part of this act now. And annual reporting requirements that are part of it.
Yeah, so
So-
you bring up one more thing that I wanted to mention because when I worked for my 1983 attorney, one of the things that we covered in Georgia was the Georgia Whistleblower Protection Act. And it only, in Georgia, it only covers whistleblowers in the event that they've been like terminated for that or what have you, if they are part of a government agency. So I think looking into enhancing the Whistleblower Act to include all whistleblowers, especially in the case of scammers or things like that.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, we have become a melting pot, like the melting pot of all types of creeds and nationalities and origins. And we do have a lot of people that are, Indians or Hispanics or whatever that operate in our call centers. And so, having that protection for them would be really helpful in enhancing the Whistleblower Act.
You know what really scares me? Like I said, I was on QVC last night. And I told you I called and then I had this foreign voice on there. I'm telling you, that scares the crap out of me. It really does. And companies, you need to, nationwide, need to think about how you're routing your calls and who you're routing them to. And I'm sure you do work, but it just doesn't make me feel comfortable that I'm talking to a person that can't even understand what I'm telling them. Last night, I had to repeat this like 5 times. I had to spell my name out finally. I had to spell everything out. And it scares the crap out of me, because who knows that they couldn't clone something, jump in on there. You got a number portrayed on there. You call 1-800, scumbag
they
or
spoof
whatever.
numbers now too,
Right.
and they can intercept calls.
Right.
So
you don't know who the hell you're dealing with out there. It's
Yeah.
such a scary proposition. So in order to build support for this legislation, this would be a bipartisan effort between Democrats and Republicans, because I don't think this is a Republican initiative, nor is it a Democratic initiative. I think it's a bipartisan initiative.
I think it should be.
It should be.
Yeah.
We should be worried about our elderly and our folks that are our elder citizens. But the other thing that we'll get a bipartisanship working effort with the Georgia Attorney General's office. That's one I think is important. The Georgia Bear investigation, which, we work with, and probably the FBI too. I think the FBI should be included. The Georgia Bankers Association.
Ooh.
They've got an invested, effort on this thing. Credit unions, district attorneys, ARP of Georgia.
Yeah.
They handle a lot of accounts for elderly. Adult Protective Services, like I told you, I make a lot of phone calls to those.
What about like Medicaid and insurance companies?
Yeah, Medicaid insurance companies,
Mhm.
senior advocacy organizations that would fall under those things. So, final exploitation of older adults affects the constituents across the political spectrum. That's why I said it's a bipartisan effort.
Yeah.
It's not something that's one side or the other. A well-crafted bill combines prevention, early detection, stronger enforcement. Victim assistance would likely have a broadest impact on protecting Georgia older residents from fraud.
Yeah.
And that's the idea behind the legislation that I would introduce once I get in, into the representative's office. Now, you talk about AI technology. I'm going to briefly go over. I'm not going to go through all of the AI technology that could be used, but AI detection platforms. AI platform could analyze reports from banks. This is how effective it is. Local law enforcement, adult protective services, consumer complaints, telecommunication providers where it's permitted. And that's all based on warrants and all those other things because there's protections on warrants. Years ago, we could call like AT&T on the line and say, we need paperwork on this phone number now.
Yeah.
Now we got to have a warrant for that. The only other way that they'll do that without a warrant is if it's a critical situation. You've got a missing person or something of that nature. So they get very protective over those issues and stuff. It could also identify emerging scam patterns. AI can do that. It repeats phone numbers, cryptocurrency wallets, fake websites, common scripts used by scammers. And then we would establish a statewide scam intelligence center, which is important. I've got a lot more stuff here, but I don't think I'm going to go through all of it. Voice AI scam detection, which is important because they are cloning our voices now.
Yeah.
They're cloning our pictures, which is scary. I told you about what happened to me. Cryptocurrency forensics, trace stolen funds. I mean, we're able to do this with hundreds of thousands of records a second with AI. So we can use AI to our advantage also if it's used properly. And we know that we have the right training and the right technicians that can do that.
Well, an example of that, just real quickly, is so a lot of colleges now, especially if you're attending an online college, they actually have AI software that whenever submissions are put in, they can actually detect if you have used AI. So,
for your school papers.
Yeah. So, and that's something that obviously it can't be that unreasonable as far as the expense or even the setup or even the housing of it. So that's something that can be tailored for like financial institutions or things like that. So
I'm curious on how many papers get kicked back.
Well,
in university.
Well, let me tell you, I went.
We
to
used
Liberty.
to use Cliff's Notes to get our till that caught on with the professors, and then you couldn't use Cliff's Notes anymore.
Well, I know I went to Liberty, and I know that I have seen like TikToks where people went to like Phoenix, like Miller Mott, things like that, where they've actually been in class and submitted their stuff or taken their tests in class.
Yeah.
And they will literally be able to detect, hey, these answers are AI, or you are using AI to be able to get the answer to your essay or whatever the case is. And so there are lots of colleges now that are using that.
Yeah. Artificial intelligence and machine learning. They can learn all these data machines, flag repeat offenders, predict emergency scam trends that are coming on. There's so much usefulness to this if we use it properly where it is, but it's got to be used properly and it's got to be monitored and everything else. Blockchain analytics. We use tracking cryptocurrency by scams by following the movement of stolen funds, how it gets funds all over the world when it gets moved around. Identify wallets linked to criminal activity, detecting money laundering, producing evidence for investigations, and go. I know you get a question.
Yeah. So the whole selling point of crypto is the blockchain, and the whole idea of having the blockchain is that it is really untraceable unless you are the server that's hosting the blockchain.
Yeah.
And you can't get access to the blockchain without
Yeah.
having your specific passcode, which is whoop-a-doo, like
Yeah.
length. It's got like tons of numbers and
Right.
letters in it. So I don't know how they would create that kind of technology for the blockchain.
I don't know, but that's what's being abused also.
Yeah.
So, when
Well,
you
they're
have the
taking it-
darkness like that, then it's only open up for more abuse than anything.
Right. Well, I mean, I think about how, like, in the Jeffrey Epstein, investigation, they're
Yeah.
talking about how a lot of the traffickers would use the Bitcoin to be able to launder their money and things because
Yeah.
it was not as traceable as cash or credit cards or whatever. So, I mean, I know that a lot of those people have been jumping from the Bitcoin to the crypto.
Yeah.
But
Rightfully so. I mean, there was so much fraud involved in it. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. Voice biometrics and voice AI. This is some of the things that they're cloning. We'd be able to recognize that we can detect those AI generated voices.
can I tell you honestly,
Yeah.
this is something that I did a long time ago. When
Yeah.
I get numbers that I don't know
Yeah.
or I know that they're scams, like so let's say that I answer the phone and I don't know the number. I'll use my British voice. Hello. How are you? Hello.
Is this the USA?
And I'll do it that way because I don't want them to be able to, like, if for instance I said yes to something and they cut my yes,
Yeah.
they can't say that was my voice.
Right. The other thing, link analysis software. That's something that I'm extremely familiar with.
Link analysis.
This goes into the intelligence field. So link analysis diagrams, some of you don't understand what that is, but in military terms, we can take the main player. If we get the information through AI, we develop these leads and the main guy can be in the center. And then you have the spider webs that go on the outside of these people that are involved in the internet scams.
Like you see in NCIS.
Right. And I
stuff.
mean, one guy might be involved just cryptocurrency
Yeah.
and how many are out there.
Yeah.
What that does is it helps identify a target list.
Yeah.
And, in Iraq, we did our high value HVTs, which are high value targets. We went after them for a different reason. But you could develop the HVT list of these people that are, using AI or they're constantly doing or they're part of these scams. So
Yeah.
that's the intelligence. Look, there's useful purposes behind everything. And then I know a lot of people go, oh, that just violates my Fifth Amendment rights and it violates, this and video cameras and all that stuff. And I get it. I understand. Trust me, I understand this thing. But there's more useful purposes for this stuff than there, and against unuseful purposes for why it's being done out there. Open source, which is OSINT, open source. That's an intelligence asset of it. Social media, websites, domain registrations, business records, public databases, theater, intelligence platforms in country. We need to be working with the countries that specifically are the biggest abusers. Somalia, the Philippines, India, Pakistan, all of those in there. I'll tell you a story. One time, one guy calls on me, and I don't remember what the scam was. And when I told him I would answer, it was like, oh, is this Mr. LaJoy? And I was like, no, this is Columbus Police Department. Click. Click. And then he called back. And so then I knew it was a scam. So I call him back and it was like, I was like, hey.
They get real mad too. And
Oh,
start
I called this guy like 5 times. Call him. And he answered every time. This was the crazy part. He answered every time. And I told him, you little scumbag. I said, how do you feel by ripping people off the way? Oh, screw your sister. Screw your sister. I was like,
that's all
dude,
you got.
yeah, that's all you got, buddy. And then finally he just hung up on me.
Look,
he wouldn't talk to me anymore.
Look,
So it was funny.
I saw this TikTok video of this lady who she's actually a newscaster. And
Yeah.
so like one of the spam artists called her and was asking her, about certain things. And she's like, hey, yeah, sure. Can you hold on just a second? And then she goes, 3, 2, 1. I'm coming from blah, 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 blah. And we're like dealing with scam artists. And so like you hear them kind of hang up really quickly. I thought that was really like kind of innovative and cute.
So part of this whole system that I'm talking about is, there's the different categories of what we would be looking at. But as an emergency idea, this would be called the Georgia Fraud Fusion Center. All right. all these law enforcement agencies like all these terms and terminologies and everything. So ours is going to be the Georgia Fraud Fusion Center. And in the Georgia Fraud Fusion Center, it will take care of, they'll be looking at AI for pattern detection, blockchain analytics, like I told you before, link analysis diagrams, digital forensics, OSINT, open source network information, threat intelligence, GIS mapping. So we'll be able to, like you talked about earlier, this guy that's on the internet, he can track them all the way to their apartment in the Philippines. And on that day, and when he tells them, he's like, look, I'm looking at you. I know where you're at. I see your vehicle. I know what apartment I'm in. Well, GIS mapping would be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then we could work with international law enforcement authorities to go after these networks, shut them down.
Yeah.
And also secure case management. So that's what the Georgia Fusion Task Force would do. Those are my ideas. And so I have a lot of good ones. But see, the idea is when I run for a public office, I'm just not running out there because I feel that I need to run out there. I'm running on solutions. I'm running on creating solutions that I think are important. And I take an element of that I think is widely abused and not supported. And so I want to improve on those ideas. And that's what I said about running for mayor. We still have a bad crime problem here in Columbus. And so I said that I went from a 7-step crime reduction strategy to a 5. And the reason I went from a 5 is because initially when I analyzed this stuff, I looked at the cure violence thing. But then as the more that I looked at it, I said to myself, wait a minute. They're treating this like a communicable disease.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is not I believe it's a problem. I believe it's a nationwide problem. It's a city problem.
I think
it's not a communicable, but you're looking at it in a different way.
Yeah.
I mean, you're treating it like a disease you can catch. This has nothing to do with that. And so these are all just buzzwords that they throw out there. And I know Miss Chiquita Bryant's probably she's already attacked me on some of Chiquita has already attacked me on a couple other things. But, I still think it's a Ponzi scheme, especially when you had a local representative here that said, he got $50,000, but, when the next level of money they were going to hand out, we wouldn't see results for 10 years. Look, it took me 3 hours to come up with a solution to handle this issue. And you're talking about waiting 10 years before you're going to see any kind of results in Columbus? That's horseshit.
I really don't think people are concerned with cost-effective and efficient and prompt resolution. I think they like to ride the wave of profit.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right, but that's the way it is. So try to wrap this up a little bit.
Before we wrap up, I would actually like to give some quick tips for people when you're done doing what you're doing for how to keep themselves from fraud. I got you.
So, we do advertising, and we're asking if you want to advertise with the program. It's $300 a month. The charter advertiser rate, that's for the charter. We can special make any type of advertising that you want to do, but according to this, you got a 30 seconds commercial spot you'll give with a live sponsor. The mentions personally delivered by myself and our co-host. Premium brand associated, trusted with authentic, respected local media voice. Early strategic positioning, will get you the best rates, obviously, and protect charter rate. So we want to reach out to our East Alabama and West Georgia folks in order to get that done. And if you want to advertise, this is a good platform. We have the largest platform in the area. I don't remember what our results were. Last time I looked, I think we were at, what was it? 300,000 or 400,000 or something like that. We were out there. So a lot of people are watching the broadcasts and stuff. So I wanted to kind of wrap things up about just in general what we talked about. That kind of brings us to the end of the show. And then, of course, Julia is going to give us a few key points. We talked about fraud scams and how effective, how they affected elderly. I think that's important. We need to protect our elderly because we're going to get there too. So I want to make sure that these protections are in place and that we're going to benefit from it too. And I will introduce legislation to protect the elderly. I think it's important. Nobody else is doing it. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to fight for it. If I get with Jackson and he's the governor, who's the guy, I'm going to make sure that he's going to do what I'm asking him to do. Solutions to monitoring bank accounts of the elderly family members. We got to come up with solutions to effectively monitor those things and make sure they're not getting scammed and money's getting taken out of there. They worked hard for that money, and I want to make sure that they retain that money, as much as they can. Scams that can catch anyone off guard regardless of the age, and they can. I just give you an example of what happened to me when I was sick. So it can happen to anybody. I'll be 67 in March. So
you're a spring chicken.
Yeah, I don't feel like it, but yeah, you're right. So the proposals that are introduced is, as a new state representative for District 139 in the next election cycle, which is 2028. I just talked about those and the creation of a new fraud task force. So I want you to tune in for our future episodes. We'll be talking about some very important subjects, and we'll announce in the futures what those in. And like always, we want you to like and share all across Facebook. Yeah, follow, please. And share it on your social media sites and look for those because we're on YouTube also.
Yeah.
And so floor is yours, man.
All right. Okay. All right. So I have been in the computer industry since 1998. I have learned about the internet, networking, and all sorts of things, safe browsing on the internet. So I wanted to offer just a few little tips and tricks to be able to share with your elderly loved one. I know that this is stuff that I shared with my mom. So first things first, a lot of the fraud is happening on the smartphone.
Yeah.
So, and it's very difficult.
Phone is smarter than some of us.
Yeah. And most of our elderly save passwords to their apps and things like their bank account or whatever. So
I still write them down.
Well, that's good.
Because I don't save them because those phones could be compromised too.
Well, and then they have those, platforms where they hold all of your passwords to everything. So my first tip would be enable your fingerprint on your phone.
Yeah.
And that way that no one has the ability to get into those apps.
What about the retina scans? Most of the applications
if they have
can do.
those, you can use those.
Most banks do now.
Yeah. But the other thing that I definitely encourage is making sure you're not saving your passwords.
Yeah.
I know that can be difficult because sometimes, like we were talking about, the elderly can have like mind slippage or, like go into places where they have bad memories.
Right.
But, we used to write, like the boomers used to write down all of their phone numbers and their addresses of people. So go back to having those things. The other thing is when you get in an email, make sure that the last part of an email address matches the business that these people are saying that they're from. So for instance, if they're calling you from the IRS, have them send you an email from the IRS. And if they're sending it to you from the Gmail, then you know that that's questionable.
Look, federal government agencies will
They're
never
not going to call.
No, they will send a certified letter to you if they want to contact you. So don't fall into that damn trap.
The other thing is making sure that you are getting a telephone number from that agent and saying, hey, like I want to call you back. Now, I know this doesn't always work because they can spoof, okay? But if they're asking for your social security number over the phone, I would caution you to make sure that you're speaking to a legitimate agent.
Yeah.
The other thing is when you're on the internet, don't download free games that have like things that you can click on, and don't sign up for surveys. Don't do that, to win gift cards, because they will take and put malware and spamware and things like that.
I don't even like the 10, 15% discounts they go when you provide, because they sell that information too.
Yeah. So some of the other things that I would recommend is, and I know that this can be a little time consuming. It doesn't take a long time because this is what I've done. Make sure that you're on the no call list. So go and put your telephone number on there so that you know if you're getting a solicitor or something like that, then you know that they are calling you illegally. But then also if you're getting text messages or calls from spam numbers identifying themselves as somebody, take a few minutes. It takes literally less than like 3 minutes to go onto the FTC's website. So that's Foxtrot Tango Charlie, the FTC's website. You can go in there and you can fill out your information, put the telephone number they called from, who they said they were. And a lot of times what I do is if I get an email, if you're familiar with how to do an IP lookup, you can pull up IP lookup on the internet and put the IP address in there and provide that in your FTC report as well. So those are just kind of a few things that I have like told my mom about. And it really does help. So that's something that they can feel like they still have control over, and you don't necessarily have to do that for them.
Yeah. Like I said, it's kind of funny. I still write the passwords down, but I'm going to tell you now, if you pulled my book up and took the username and the password and you wrote it down and tried to get in a website, it won't work. You want to know why? Because I am smart enough to figure out in the Army, we have those CEOI books. Okay. So when the letter C is there, it doesn't mean the letter C. It might be 3 letters down the line. So if you put C, it might be A, or C, or it might be B.
That's actually kind of smart.
Well, that's the way we did that. There was
Cryptic.
It was cryptic, but we called it Black Horse. Black Horse had 10 letters, right? So we would, in those 10 letters, we had letters above and below those things, and then you would write those down, and those were a message. It would eventually develop a message. So I still do that. It's in my brain when I do it.
Well, now that you've told everybody, you're going to have to switch it up.
Yeah, but you're not going to know it's Black Horse. You're not going to know what it is. It's a 10-letter word. It could be any of them.
Got you.
But that's just one smart idea. That's how we worked. It was, we have the CEOI books, which would basically do the same thing. For that day period, date time group, it has a certain number of letters and stuff that mark up on there.
Yeah.
But for a field expedient method, we would use, names like Black Horse, and 1 through 10, it's 10 letters, right? Then you can make the letters anything you want above or below that, right? And that's disseminated through the folks that you're working with. They're the only ones that know what the letters and numbers are in Black Horse. So that was just a field expedient method. So, I mean, you can do those types of things. Hey, there's nothing wrong with the old technology. It works. The new technology we have out there can be cloned, can be copied. Your phone numbers can be cloned.
Yeah.
They are cloning with AI. They're cloning your pictures. And
this really is the age of deception.
It is.
And it's very hard to stay above the deception.
Yeah. So we wanted today's broadcast take a little different turn about, things that we think are going to work. Initiatives that I want to propose as a state representative. Like I said, running for office exclusively in Columbus is a losing proposition. It certainly is.
Unless you're a Democrat.
Unless you're a Democrat and you want to run for, you want to make history, okay, which is all they're thinking about is making history. I mean, come on, man. Seriously?
Yeah, they'll be the first Georgia city to historically end up in the dumps.
Yeah, and it's going to come, and we're just waiting. There, people go, "You're not giving them a chance." It was like, listen, I'm willing to give anybody a chance who doesn't have an extensive back history. Okay, that just kind of proves what you're going to do in the future, right? What's that old saying about, hitting your head or something, or
I know that the old saying about insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Yeah, exactly. So come on, guys. Seriously.
Well, I also just want to kind of add this too. Like, we as humans are predispositioned to judgment based off of past history. Like, we look at people's past.
I don't judge people.
We all do. It's inherent in our nature. But so it's like if you look at a person's history, okay, like collectively, a person's behavior doesn't change overnight.
No.
And so if you have a consistent pattern of lying and evading and excuses and, deflecting and throwing people under the bus and all of these things.
And telling them they ran 5 or 6 times for sheriff and now mayor. Yeah, all those crappy things.
Well, that's a case of not changing overnight for the better. But that's, again, these are things that people should be looking at. And
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it seems insane that somebody who was fired because the council lost confidence in
That's the key
his
word.
ability to lead, direct, maintain whatever the city's affairs, and to do that over multiple employees and departments, to put him as one of the main people over the entire county and city that's insane to me.
Yeah.
I just feel like if you're not seeing it, you're either blind or you're negligent and you don't want to see it, or you do see it and you still choose to look past it.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation with a guy over in the Walmart parking lot over on the East End, the Walmart over on the East End up there. And he was like, "Hey, man, he's good. He's a good guy. He's a photographer." And he told me, he said, "Man," he said, "that Columbus is just not ready for you, man." I said, "Yeah,
They'll never be ready for you.
no, they'll never be ready for me because
Well,
they don't want me to open the fraudulent door task force. They don't want it because they know that it's going to lead in different directions. That's what scares them the most. And I would think if you're in business and you want things to be, this town has got a reputation. This town and Phoenix City's got a bad reputation. 100 years ago, things happen around here.
the Phoenix City story.
Yeah, the Phoenix City story. And people, that's just not analogous to across that river. It's right over here too.
Yeah.
All these things happen over here. And so some of them families are still here and they're still alive and well. They're distant family members.
Underground mafia and the cartels.
It is what it is, but it's there and it scares the hell out of people. And we're not trying to scare the hell out of people. We're trying to
Make them aware.
Make them aware, but also we want good people that want to, look out for the citizens of Columbus. They want to do the good things in here. And one thing leads to another, and the crime is out of control. And it's going to stay that way until you recognize the fact that you have a crime problem. People will say, well, it's not only South Columbus. No shit. We know that. It's all over Columbus. I mean, I had a running gun battle, 2 cars in my neighborhood last year. I understand that. But I don't want my granddaughter, whose bedroom is closest to the roadway, getting hit by a stray bullet, which has happened here.
Yeah. Well, you remember there was that
11-year-old
apartment complex where the gangs hit them up and the holes went through there. And,
oh, I know.
Yeah.
And to say, and shame on the law enforcement, to say that, we have created a 40% reduction and the Zohannans no longer exist. Really? You don't go to the GGIA meetings, which are the Georgia Gang Investigator Association meetings. Go to them and learn the intelligence of what's going on across statewide. That's why we went from 79,000 to 124,000 active gang members.
Do you know what I think I want to do? I think I want to go into Pacer and I want to go into Peach Court and I want to look and maybe even do an open records request for the current prosecutions at the county level, at the state level,
that'll be
to
interesting.
see which gang prosecutions are relative to the Zohannans.
Yeah. I would be curious on all these people that they dismantled the gangs, how many active prosecutions they actually got out of it.
Well, and we should be able to find that here, in Muscogee County, because they have a gang task force, GBI gang task force that's specifically delegated to prosecuting the gang members.
I think that'll be the next show that we do once we do the research on this and show the results, because I know personally the results aren't that good.
No.
They're not that good.
No.
There's a handful. I mean, what was it last year? I think it was 120 guys that had that big sweeping task force, and about a handful of them were actually prosecuted, and that was it.
I know this probably seems a little morbid, and maybe even some people could say like that's not very Christian.
Okay.
But there are thoughts that I have sometimes, like those of you who are saying, "Oh, well, there's been a crime reduction," or those of you that are saying like, "No, we don't have a gang problem." It's like like at times when I pray, it's like,
Teresa
Lord,
Tomlinson,
would you allow those people
we
to
got a
have
gang problem.
would you allow it to touch those people specifically? Because I know for me, like I have been humbled when I said something was a certain way. And then God was like, "Oh, really? Okay, let me show you."
Hey,
And I don't wish that for people, but I feel like sometimes they have to experience a little taste of that for themselves
Yeah.
to see that they've been completely rose colored.
yeah, I know. Hey, they got a new Chuck Williams bobblehead. They got
Do
it at the baseball field. Yeah, person called me yesterday and told me, I said, "You ain't gonna believe this. They got a bobblehead, Chuck Williams bobblehead." I said, "Does it actually look like him?" "No, it's too skinny." Hey, I'm gonna go get me a bobblehead. I'm gonna have a Chuck Williams bobblehead
I
here
think
on
that
my
would
table.
be cool.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Can-
Anyway,
can we get one of Barbagoche? Because I really like her. I think that would be cool.
I like I have a renewed respect for Barbara
Me too.
after what happened at Columbus State University.
Well, and
Remember at the end of the briefing,
Yeah.
and I brought up all of the downfall of IH, Isaiah Hughley, and he was furious. He wanted to mount an attack on me, and she goes, "No, according to the rules,
Yeah,
you can't do it on a closing statement."
Yeah.
I was like, "Thank you."
yeah. Well, and
Read
even
the
Jason
rules.
Dennis, like I was
Jason
really
was-
surprised.
Yeah, Jason was good. I'll give those guys credit. They did a good job on controlling it and doing what they had to do. I don't respect WRBL all that much because of what they initially tried to do by zeroing us in on the dollar amount who was going to go on stage. That was horseshit. That's not fair. That's not fair, guys. I realize you wanted to pit the two top candidates by money at the top, but is that overall when you look at that, was that fair? Seriously? No, it was not. WTVM did the right thing and took all the candidates and put them on stage. That's what should happen.
Yeah.
That should happen. That's what's supposed to happen in a democracy. Okay, whether you realize that or not. Anyway, well, let's wrap this up. I hope you enjoyed what we talked about today. I think it's important, again, that we take care of our elderly folks in Georgia. I think they were our future at one time. Now they become our dependents, and we need to take care of them and make sure that they're safe and that they live out their lives the fullest that they can, based on their financial situation. And we don't need some scumbag coming out there and scamming money off of them.
Right.
And if I can create through legislation, I can create this task force that I'm talking about, I will do it. I will fight everything that I can, tooth and nail, to create the legislation that we need to protect them. So
Yeah.
thank you, folks, for tuning in today. And we'll carry out, again, like we always do, and carry it out with a prayer. And
Okay.
if you will do that, Julie.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Lord, I just want to thank you, first of all, that you care for the elderly, Lord, that you care about legacy, that you care about inheritance, Lord, that you preserved the generations, even in your word. And Lord, I just thank you for putting that on Mark's heart to care for the elderly, for giving him wisdom for how to address that problem where they are getting scammed or could potentially getting scammed out of their inheritance or the legacy that they would leave for the later generations. And so, Father, I just ask that you would just work wisdom within our community members through the younger generation, through the technologically advanced generation, to assist the elderly, Lord, in this way, that they would take an interest in securing the future, because it is the elder generation or our ancestors that pass on wisdom, that pass on inheritance, that pass on growth or dominion. And so we need them. We need them to work along with the younger generation as well. And so, Lord, I just ask that you would rise up legislators that would care like Mark does about the elderly, that they would help secure their future, that there would be legislation that is implemented to protect these different areas and avenues. And Lord, if there are no longer people that wish to do that, that are currently sitting in these places of leadership, God, I ask that you would remove them and that you would replace them with people who do care about preservation, just like you do. And so, Lord, we love you. We thank you. We ask that you would keep us safe throughout our week, that you would be with us on our travels, Lord, that you would be with us as we go to work, not just us as the staff and co-hosts and hosts of the Mark LaJoy Show, but also the people of Columbus and anyone listening to our podcast during the week and through the future. So, Lord, we love you. We lift you up. We praise you. And it's through your son, Jesus Christ, that we pray. Amen.
Amen. And folks, these protections go across for our elderly and our special needs populations also.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I probably failed to mention that, during the broadcast, but they go hand in hand. And like I said, we work exclusively with Adult Protective Service and making sure that they're involved, because quite frankly, there's just a lot of things going on out there that we need to have our citizens, our special populations, and our elderly citizens they need to be protected. And so, God, I hope we protect them and we protect our special populations and also protect our troops that are overseas right now serving in harm's way, that we don't lose any additional life. But God, protect them and for everything that they do. All right. And good night. You all have a good night.